I never thought wanting a baby would destroy my marriage, until the day I learned the embryo growing inside me wasn't even ours. Looking back, it's impossible to say exactly when things started to unravel. Maybe it was the endless doctor visits, the shots, the bruises on my belly from hormones, the whispered arguments about just relaxing, as if stress could single-handedly turn my ovaries off. Or maybe it was the fact that after 5 years of trying, after all the tears and negative pregnancy tests and Facebook baby announcements from friends, I'd started to see my husband, Caleb, not as my soulmate, but as my partner in a war we kept losing. We'd been married almost 7 years when we finally decided, IVF or bust. I was 34. Caleb, 36. We lived in a 2-bedroom apartment in North Austin with a little balcony just big enough for 2 folding chairs and a dying basil plant. I taught 5th grade at the local public school. Caleb was a project manager for a big construction firm, working long hours, always glued to his phone. People who haven't been through infertility think IVF is this miracle that's just stressful and expensive. They don't understand the full surrender. Blood work at dawn, swallowing handfuls of supplements, peeing on sticks at 2 a.m., and the way your marriage becomes a business negotiation. Every date night ended with a needle. We stopped having sex for fun and started having it on a timer. At some point, Caleb's optimism turned into stubbornness. This next round, babe, I can feel it. After our second failed embryo transfer, my hope hit zero, but Caleb refused to quit. Let's try one more time. We can finance it, my firm, doing great. He was so certain, so focused, I let myself be swept along. The clinic, Cedar Valley Fertility, was bright and expensive. All glass and steel, staff in cheerful purple scrubs, walls lined with inspirational quotes about miracles. Dr. Benjamin looked like he belonged in a toothpaste commercial, kind smile, confident handshake, endless patience. We have 4 healthy embryos, he told us after my retrieval, and great odds for success this cycle. In the waiting room, I met dozens of women just like me, bags under their eyes, hope stitched into every conversation. We became friends, sometimes just for a single hour. There was one woman I saw every appointment, always early, never with a partner. Tall, elegant, always reading medical journals on her phone. I thought she seemed lonely. Her name was Marissa. When it was finally time for transfer, everything felt like it was finally turning in our favor. Your best embryo is ready, Dr. Benjamin said. We'll do the transfer Friday at 9 a.m. I remember the moment the tiny ball of cells appeared on the monitor, a perfect speck, full of hope. The days after the transfer were a blur of anxiety. I lay on the couch, binge-watching reruns, afraid to move, to laugh, to even sneeze too hard. I made lists of baby names, doodled nurseries, texted my sister every symptom. Caleb became attentive in a new way, more helpful, more affectionate. He made me smoothies, sent me memes at work, called every lunch break to check in. The home test stayed stubbornly negative until day 9, when I saw the faintest pink line. I ran into the kitchen sobbing, shaking the stick at Caleb. He whooped, spun me in a hug, tears in his eyes. Our first ultrasound at 6 weeks showed a perfect, flickering heartbeat. Dr. Benjamin shook our hands. Congratulations, Mama and Dad, this one looks strong. We posted a cryptic photo of 2 mugs, brewing something special, and fielded hundreds of congratulations from family and friends. It was the happiest we'd been in years. But there were little cracks, even then, if I'm honest. Caleb seemed more distracted, texting at odd hours, ducking into the hallway to take work calls late at night. He insisted he was negotiating a huge project with a Houston firm, but sometimes I'd find him staring blankly at his screen, jaw clenched. I told myself it was just stress. One night, a week after the ultrasound, he came home late, eyes glassy, smelling faintly of vanilla and mint. Traffic was insane, he muttered, heading straight for the shower. I sat in the kitchen, staring at my phone, fighting the urge to scroll through his messages. I hated myself for even considering it. That's not who we were, or so I thought. As my bump grew, so did Caleb's distance. I tried to reconnect, planned date nights, bought lingerie, left him sweet notes in his work bag. But the more I tried, the more he pulled away. The only thing we didn't fight about was the baby. Looking back, there were signs, I just didn't want to see them. It was in my second trimester when everything shattered. I'd left work early after a dizzy spell, pregnancy brain, the nurse called it. I decided to surprise Caleb with dinner. As I opened the front door, I heard his voice from the living room, low and urgent. He was on the phone. "I told you, she doesn't suspect a thing, no. The clinic said the transfer was successful." "Yes, the one with the PGD markers, the one you wanted." My stomach twisted. PGD, pre-implantation genetic diagnosis. We had talked about it in passing, but neither of us had opted for extra testing beyond the basics. I stayed frozen by the door, listening. "I know what I promised, Marissa. You'll have your chance. Once everything's stable, we'll work out visitation. I'm not backing out now. This is too important for both of us." I dropped the bag of takeout. Caleb turned, phone still pressed to his ear, face draining of color when he saw me. "Who's Marissa?" I whispered, voice shaking. He stammered, "It's just work. She's an engineer. I'm managing her project." But the lie was too easy, too practiced. The pit in my stomach spread cold through my whole body. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to demand the truth. But instead, I walked past him, locked myself in the bathroom, and sobbed until my body ached. That night, he tried to explain, weaving stories about contracts, confidential clients, high-pressure deadlines. But the words didn't stick. I slept on the couch. I woke up to dozens of missed calls from my sister, my best friend, even my mom. Caleb must have tried to cover his tracks. I ignored them all, curling up in a ball. The next week, every time I looked at my growing belly, I wondered whose life I was really carrying. Then the bombshell. Dr. Benjamin called unexpectedly. "Mrs. Dalton, can you come in for a follow-up blood test? There's a discrepancy in your records, nothing alarming, just a technical check." My heart dropped. I went in alone. The nurse took my blood, eyes darting between the monitor and my chart. "Doctor," Benjamin came in, his face unusually grave. "There's been a mix-up with your embryo tracking. We want to confirm some details." I felt dizzy. "What do you mean mix-up?" He hesitated. "We need to check some markers. It's a precaution." I left the clinic trembling, mind racing. That night, I searched Caleb's laptop while he slept. His email was open, unusual for him. One thread caught my eye, Marissa's name in the subject line. My heart pounded as I read. "Caleb, I can't believe you actually did it. This is our only shot. I want updates after every appointment. She doesn't get to keep my baby." It was like my world caved in. I shook him awake. "What did you do, Caleb?" He blinked, groggy, then saw my face. "What are you talking about?" "Marissa, the embryo, the emails." He went pale. "Babe, I had to. We couldn't lose another round. Our best embryo was the one with the highest chance." The clinic, Marissa had one left from her cycle. She wanted me to, she asked me to help her. It was supposed to be a win-win. "A win-win?" I screamed. "You let them put another woman's embryo inside me? You didn't even ask me." He broke right there, started sobbing into his hands. "I just wanted us to have a baby. I thought it wouldn't matter. You'd never know." I left that night. I called my sister, crashed on her couch, spent the whole night shaking and crying. The next morning, Marissa called me. Her number flashed on my phone like a threat. "I'm sorry you had to find out this way," she said, voice icy. "But that baby is genetically mine. Caleb promised. He said we could share custody. I'll be there when it's born. Don't make this harder than it has to be." I hung up nauseous. The clinic confirmed the truth. A clerical error allowed the wrong embryo to be transferred, but Caleb had orchestrated it, pressuring staff, using his connection with Marissa, who'd been freezing embryos as a single mother. My body didn't feel like mine anymore. My baby didn't feel like mine either. I started Googling embryo mix-ups, custody battles, lawsuits, nightmare stories. They all ended in heartbreak for everyone. My family was in shambles. Caleb moved out. Marissa hired a lawyer. The clinic wanted to settle quietly. I refused. That's when the rage set in. I wasn't just heartbroken, I was furious. If I couldn't win my old life back, I'd make damn sure neither of them got off easy. My sister Taryn tried to talk me into moving in at least for a while. "You don't need to be alone right now, Soph. Let us help." But her husband worked nights, their house was chaos with 3 little boys, and I just couldn't handle the noise. Instead, I holed up in my apartment, numb and angry, fielding a barrage of texts and calls from Caleb, alternating between desperate apologies and self-pitying explanations. I made an appointment with a therapist, Dr. Ortega, a soft-voiced woman in her 50s who listened without judgment. I spilled everything: my marriage, the years of infertility, the betrayal, the sickening sense that I'd become a vessel for someone else's child. Dr. Ortega asked if I'd named the baby yet. I broke down, sobbing. I wanted to call her Harper. Now I can't even say it out loud. Meanwhile, Marissa's lawyer began calling the clinic, demanding updates and threatening legal action if I restricted access. The emails were always clinical. Our client wishes to be included in all medical updates regarding the fetus as the biological mother. I wanted to throw my phone across the room. Caleb, for his part, begged me to let him be involved. I'm still her father, Soph. I made a mistake, but we can still be a family. A family? What family? I wanted to scream. I couldn't look at him without seeing the betrayal. The lies, the calculated way he'd gone behind my back, turned the most vulnerable moment of my life into a transaction. Every doctor's appointment felt like walking through a minefield. Sometimes Marissa would show up in the waiting room, her arms crossed, eyes flickering between my belly and my face. The first time she tried to sit next to me, I got up and moved. The second time, she brought a folder of legal papers and offered them to my obgyn, insisting on being listed as genetic parent. The staff looked horrified. I left in tears, blood pressure sky high. Dr. Benjamin was apologetic but powerless. There's no clear protocol for this, Sophia. Legally, you're the gestational carrier, but the genetics complicate things. I asked what would happen if I refused Marissa access. He shook his head. This has to go through the courts. At night, I'd lie awake, one hand on my belly, feeling the flutter of tiny kicks. Was this child mine? Would I have to give her away? Would she hate me when she was older? I tried to write a letter to the baby, something to explain the mess she was born into. I kept crumpling the paper, never able to get past the first line. My friends tried to support me, but even they didn't know what to say. Some suggested running away, moving to another state before the birth. Others thought I should give Marissa joint custody, for the baby's sake. One night, over takeout, my friend Alyssa said, "You could sue the clinic. This was their fault, not yours." The idea planted itself in my brain. I started researching obsessively. Fertility clinic mix-ups, lawsuits, emotional distress claims, most cases settled quietly. The clinics protected themselves, the women suffered in silence. That's when I decided I wouldn't let this become another buried story. I would not just be a victim. The next morning, I called a lawyer, Gloria Gutierrez, recommended by a patient advocacy group. She listened to my story and didn't flinch. "You have a case, Sophia. This is medical malpractice, and if Caleb pressured the staff, there could be criminal charges. But more than that, you have a right to your story." We filed suit against Cedar Valley Fertility for negligence, breach of contract, and emotional distress. Gloria helped me draft a public statement, careful, clear, but damning. We released it to local media, then to a national fertility rights blog. Within days, my phone lit up with calls from journalists, podcasters, even a producer from a national morning show. For the first time since everything fell apart, I felt a flicker of power. Not control, exactly, but agency. Of course, it backfired too. Social media went wild. Trolls accused me of stealing Marissa's baby. Pro-lifers flooded my inbox, demanding I give the child to its real mother. Supporters started Stand with Sophia, while others started Bring Her Home for Marissa. I stopped reading the comments after the first death threat. Caleb tried to go dark, but Marissa doubled down, interviews, tearful confessions. "All I want is the best for my baby girl." She painted herself as the victim, a single woman desperate for family, deceived by the man who was supposed to help her. Never mind that she'd been complicit in the swap. Never mind that she was ready to rip a child from the only mother she'd ever know. During this chaos, my pregnancy marched on. I developed gestational diabetes, stress, no doubt. I missed so many days of work that my principal suggested medical leave. I started seeing Dr. Ortega twice a week, just to hold it together. There were nights I considered giving up. Letting Marissa take the baby, moving away, starting over. But then I'd feel that little kick, or see the printout from an ultrasound, tiny hands, perfect spine, and I'd remember. She needed me to fight for her. Court hearings began in my third trimester. The courtroom was a circus. Lawyers, reporters, even a sketch artist. Caleb sat with his attorney, eyes fixed on his lap. Marissa wore a soft pink blouse and cried on cue. I wore black and stared straight ahead, refusing to be cowed. The judge listened patiently to hours of legal arguments. The contract I'd signed, the ethics of embryo storage, the role of consent. Marissa's team argued for immediate joint custody. Mine argued that as the birth mother, I should retain sole custody at least until the baby was born and medical decisions made. Outside the courthouse, the media frenzy escalated. Paparazzi staked out my apartment. My sister installed a security camera. I started having panic attacks. One night, after a particularly brutal hearing, Caleb showed up at my door, eyes rimmed red. I know you'll never forgive me, but I want you to know I'm on your side now. I'll testify for you. Marissa's gone too far. I almost believed him, almost. But in the days that followed, he flip-flopped again, meeting Marissa for strategy sessions, feeding information to her lawyer. I realized he was still trying to play both sides, hopping to keep some version of his old life intact. At 37 weeks, the judge issued a temporary order. I would have full custody at birth, with a future hearing set to determine Marissa's rights. The clinic was ordered to pay damages. An independent ethics review was launched. I felt relief until Marissa called. This isn't over, Sophia. You'll never be her real mother. Blood doesn't lie. I blocked her number. For the first time since this nightmare began, I let myself feel hope. I finished the nursery, yellow walls, clouds painted by my niece, a crib my father assembled. I put up the name sign, Harper Grace. I played lullabies on my old guitar, sang to my belly, told my baby girl everything would be okay. But deep down, I knew, nothing would ever be simple again. The night before Harper was born, I barely slept. My body ached with the weight of 8 months of anxiety. Every time I drifted off, nightmares yanked me awake, judges banging gavels, Marissa snatching my baby from my arms, Caleb apologizing in endless loops. I paced the nursery, tracing the painted clouds with my fingertip, whispering promises to the little life inside me. My sister spent the night on the sofa, making chamomile tea and telling old stories about us as kids. You're stronger than you think, Soph. No matter what happens, that baby is yours. You carried her. You fought for her. That's what she'll remember. At dawn, my water broke. Tarin grabbed the go bag, called the doctor, and tried to steady my breathing. The drive to the hospital was surreal, Austin's early morning quiet, pink sunrise painting the city, my heart thundering with both terror and anticipation. At every stoplight, I pictured Marissa outside the delivery room, demanding entry, a judge with a clipboard, nurses whispering in the halls. The hospital staff was ready. Dr. Benjamin arrived, eyes kind but exhausted. He squeezed my hand before the epidural and said, "Today is about you and your baby, no one else." Labor was both harder and easier than I expected. The pain was real, the exhaustion total, but I was fueled by months of rage and hope. My sister held my hand, whispering, "You're almost there, just a little longer." When Harper's first cries filled the room, I broke down, sobbing with relief and love. They laid her on my chest, all warm skin and flailing arms, and I whispered, I love you, Harper Grace." She blinked up at me, solemn and perfect. In that moment, it didn't matter whose DNA she carried, she was mine. But even then, the outside world pressed in. A nurse came in with a hospital social worker, clipboard in hand. "We just want to confirm some details for the birth certificate. Will the father be present?" Caleb had the right to be named. Marissa, as biological mother, had filed paperwork demanding to be listed as well. I gritted my teeth. The father is Caleb Dalton, the mother is Sophia Dalton, that's it. Marissa wasn't at the hospital. Her lawyer had advised her to avoid the press, but she sent flowers and a note. "Congratulations on a healthy delivery. I'll see you soon." My sister ripped up the card before I could read it twice. For 2 glorious days, I was allowed to exist in a bubble of motherhood. Nurses helped me breastfeed, friends sent meals, Riley from next door brought Harper a crocheted blanket. My dad called from Florida, crying with joy. Dr. Ortega visited, bringing chocolate chip cookies and a letter for Harper. "In case you ever want to read about brave women," she said. But the world never really lets you hide. On the morning of our discharge, my lawyer called. "Marissa's filed an emergency motion for visitation. She's claiming you're planning to leave the state. I wasn't, but the anxiety spiked anyway. Caleb arrived with a stuffed giraffe, eyes puffy, trying to look paternal. He held Harper awkwardly, almost afraid she'd break. "She's beautiful, Soph," he whispered. "Thank you for everything." A court officer showed up an hour later to serve me the papers. Marissa wanted daily supervised visits, arguing attachment is vital from birth. The hospital social worker read the order and shook her head. "I'm so sorry you're dealing with this." I was wheeled out of the hospital through a back exit to avoid photographers. At home, I locked the door, shut the curtains, and held Harper for hours, memorizing her face, her breathing, the tiny curls of her fingers. But the visits started the next week. Marissa showed up with her attorney and a baby journal, all smiles and soft cooing. She never looked at me, only at Harper. "Mommy's here, sweetie," she'd say, and I'd have to bite my tongue to keep from screaming. At first, the visits were tense but civil, twice a week, an hour each, always supervised. Marissa would bring toys, sing lullabies, talk about future playdates. Sometimes she'd ask about Harper's eating or sleep, but she never once asked about me. Caleb attended a few times, but mostly he stayed away, embarrassed or maybe just tired of the spectacle. My sister took off work to be with me, and we started a routine. After each visit, we'd go for a walk around the block, pushing Harper's stroller, talking about anything except court. Meanwhile, the lawsuit against the clinic dragged on. Their lawyers tried to settle, offering increasing sums of money to make it all go away. But I refused. I want accountability. I want the world to know what happened. That's when the media campaign really exploded. Gloria, my lawyer, set up interviews with national outlets, podcasts, even a few fertility advocacy groups. I told my story, not just the technical details, but the raw, human pain. I wanted women everywhere to know, you're not alone and you don't have to stay silent. The backlash was immediate. Trolls flooded my social media with threats and insults. Marissa went on a talk show, crying about her stolen baby. Caleb released a statement asking for privacy in this difficult time. The twins at my school heard about it and started whispering. I considered quitting, but my principal insisted I stay. "You're a good teacher. We have your back." Every night, I wrote letters to Harper, explaining what happened, how much I loved her, how hard I fought to keep her. I slipped the letters into a box under her crib. Maybe one day, when she's old enough, she'll read them and know the truth. But some nights, I'd wake up convinced I'd lose her. That Marissa would win, that a judge would hand her over to the woman whose DNA she carried. The fear was suffocating. One day, after a particularly brutal hearing, I sat in the nursery, Harper asleep in my arms, and whispered, "No matter what happens, you are my daughter. Love is more than blood." I didn't know if it would be enough. The court hearings blurred together, dates and depositions, psychological evaluations, endless paperwork. By the time Harper was 3 months old, I'd memorized the layout of the family courthouse, the smell of stale coffee and institutional tile, the tired eyes of other parents fighting their own wars. Marissa's legal team was relentless. They paraded experts who talked about genetic imprinting and the unique bond of a biological mother. They presented journals and studies, cited obscure cases from other states. They argued that denying her regular access would harm the child's emotional development. My lawyer, Gloria, was a force of nature. She pushed back on every point, called pediatricians who testified about the dangers of disrupting a newborn's attachment, therapists who warned of trauma if Harper was removed from the only mother she knew. Sometimes, during breaks, Gloria would squeeze my hand and whisper, "You're doing great. The truth is on our side." But there were moments of pure fear. Like the day Marissa's attorney presented a color-coded calendar mapping every hour she'd missed with Harper since birth. "This child has been denied her mother for over 2,100 hours, he declared. The judge, a middle-aged woman with deep lines etched into her face, listened but gave nothing away. Outside court, the media circus raged. My mailbox overflowed with letters, some supportive, others full of hate. My sister filtered my emails, deleting threats, saving encouragement. A GoFundMe set up by a stranger raised over $80,000 for legal fees. For every troll, there were 5 women sharing their own IVF horror stories, thanking me for not backing down. Still, the pressure was crushing. My hair started falling out in clumps. I lost 10 pounds from stress, struggled to keep up with pumping and bottle feeds. Some days, I barely recognized the gaunt woman in the mirror. Harper, thankfully, thrived. She smiled early, slept through the night, hit every milestone. The pediatrician called her remarkably resilient. I wondered if I was. Caleb hovered at the margins, texting sporadically, apologizing in bursts, then disappearing. He showed up for one hearing, wearing a suit 2 sizes too big, hands shaking. When asked if he wanted to assert parental rights, he hesitated, then said, "I just want what's best for Harper." It was the first honest thing he'd said in months. Sometimes, when I felt lowest, I called Dr. Ortega. She reminded me that trauma rewires the brain, that healing would take time, and courage looked different every day. She encouraged me to keep writing those letters to Harper, to focus on small victories. A giggle, a nap in my arms, the way she squeezed my finger with impossible strength. Midway through the case, the judge ordered a home study. A social worker visited unannounced, inspecting every room, asking about my routines, my support system, my plans if I lost custody. She asked, "What would you do if Harper was placed with Marissa?" I stared at her, words choking in my throat. I'd fight, I'd appeal, I'd never stop. Meanwhile, Marissa's visits continued. She arrived with gifts, organic onesies, sensory toys, picture books in Spanish and French. She cooed and sang, asked about feeding schedules, sometimes slipped up and called herself Mommy. I watched every move, documenting it all for the court. Once, during a supervised visit, Harper cried inconsolably in Marissa's arms until I took her back. "She's tired," I said, forcing a smile. Marissa's face hardened. "She just needs to get used to me." Taryn, my sister, was my lifeline. She sat with me through every meltdown, every late-night panic attack. She moved in for a month when the stress got too much, helping with laundry and grocery runs, even fielding press calls when I was too raw to speak. She told me, "You're doing the bravest thing I've ever seen." The months dragged on. Harper's first tooth came in, then her first laugh, pure and bubbling, like she was reminding me life could still be sweet. I started keeping a video diary for her, recording moments big and small, my face puffy from crying or glowing with pride. The clinic lawsuit advanced, too. More families came forward, sharing horror stories of lost embryos, botched paperwork, pregnancies ending in heartbreak. Cedar Valley Fertility tried to settle, offering hush money, public apologies, even therapy vouchers. I refused. "This isn't just about me. It's about every woman you failed." In early spring, the judge requested closing statements. My lawyer delivered a passionate plea. A child's best interests lie with the woman who carried her, fed her, loved her from the moment she existed, not with a stranger, no matter how much DNA they share. Marissa's attorney countered with a speech about blood ties and rights of a mother. That night, I sat by Harper's crib, whispering, "Whatever happens, you're my heart." 2 weeks later, the verdict came in. The judge ruled that I would retain full physical and legal custody of Harper. Marissa was granted supervised visitation, with the option to repetition as Harper grew older. The court cited the paramount importance of maternal bonding and the child's current well-being. There was no guarantee the ruling would stand forever, but for now, Harper was mine. I sobbed in the courtroom, clutching Gloria and Taryn. Even Marissa cried, though whether from heartbreak or fury, I couldn't tell. But I knew the battle wasn't truly over. The victory in court was real, but the aftershocks kept coming. The news made national headlines. Texas mom wins custody in shocking IVF mix-up. By the time I walked out of the courthouse, there were camera crews and microphones in my face, journalists shouting questions. "How does it feel to be the most famous mom in America?" one asked. I barely heard them. All I cared about was getting home, holding Harper, and locking the door behind us. Inside, relief mingled with exhaustion. Harper was asleep in her car seat, tiny fist curled under her chin, oblivious to the chaos that had swirled around her since before she was born. I sat in the darkened nursery, tracing the delicate whorls of her hair, and finally let myself grieve for the marriage I'd lost, the innocence I'd sacrificed, the quiet life I'd imagined. I whispered, "We made it, baby girl, we made it." But peace was short-lived. The phone rang off the hook. Reporters, advocacy groups, attorneys for other families who wanted to join the lawsuit against Cedar Valley. My inbox flooded with stories from women who'd lost embryos, suffered miscarriages, or learned, like me, that the child they carried wasn't truly theirs. I responded when I could, but sometimes it was too much. Sometimes I just closed my laptop, curled up with Harper, and watched the sun set through the nursery window, pretending the rest of the world didn't exist. Social media became a battlefield. Supporters launched hashtags, #HarperStaysHome, justice for Sophia, but the trolls were louder. They accused me of stealing a child, called me a womb for hire, said I was denying a mother her rights. Some messages were so vicious I had to report them to the police. My sister monitored my accounts, deleting threats, blocking strangers, but the hate still leaked through. Marissa, meanwhile, gave interviews, posted long, tearful videos on Instagram, and started a GoFundMe to fund an appeal. "All I want is to hold my daughter," she sobbed to a camera. "To see her first steps, to be there for her first day of school." I watched one clip, then shut my phone off for days. Her pain was real, but it wasn't my responsibility to heal it. Caleb vanished for weeks, then resurfaced with a letter, handwritten, clumsy, full of regret. "I ruined everything. I know it's too late, but I want to try to be a good father to Harper if you'll let me. I'll do whatever you need, just say the word." I didn't know how to respond. I showed it to Dr. Ortega, who suggested boundaries. "Harper needs stability, not confusion," she said. For now, I set the letter aside. Life found a new rhythm, shakier but real. I went back to work part-time. My principal welcomed me with open arms, parents brought casseroles, my students drew pictures of Supermom and baby Harper for the classroom wall. Taryn stayed for another month, then eased back to her own family, promising she was always one call away. Gloria helped me finalize the clinic lawsuit. With new families joining, Cedar Valley settled, confidentially, but with a large payout. I set up a trust for Harper, paid off the legal bills, and donated to 2 fertility advocacy groups that had supported me when no one else would. As spring rolled into summer, I started a blog, sharing the messy, complicated truth of my story, good days, bad days, everything in between. I posted resources for women facing similar nightmares, tips on surviving custody battles, advice for navigating the medical system. The response was overwhelming. Hundreds of comments, thank yous, stories from across the country. For the first time in a long time, I felt seen. I felt heard. Supervised visits with Marissa began in earnest. At first, they were stiff and awkward. Harper fussed, Marissa fumbled, and the court-appointed supervisor sat in the corner taking notes. Over time, Harper grew accustomed to Marissa's scent, her voice. There were days I worried the bond would deepen, that I'd wake up one morning and realize my daughter loved another woman more than me. Dr. Ortega reminded me, love isn't a pie. There's enough for everyone. Harper knows who her mother is. Still, each visit felt like a test. Was I doing enough? Loving enough? Was Harper happy? Sometimes, after Marissa left, I'd watch my daughter sleeping and whisper, "You're mine. No matter what the world says, you're mine." But the world kept demanding answers. Invitations for interviews, offers for book deals, even a call from a TV network wanting to make a movie of my life. I said no to almost everything. I wanted Harper to have a childhood free from cameras, free from headlines. I wanted her to know joy before she knew scandal. One afternoon, as the Texas sun blazed outside, Harper took her first steps, wobbly, determined, straight into my arms. I cried, not just for her, but for every mother who'd ever doubted herself, who'd ever had to fight for her child. I wrote about it that night, closing with, "Some battles are worth every scar." The appeal loomed ahead, another storm on the horizon. But I was stronger now. My love for Harper was an anchor. My sister, my friends, Dr. Ortega, Gloria, they were my sail. Whatever came next, I would face it. For the first time since this nightmare began, I could breathe. The final court date for Marissa's appeal arrived on a drizzly Monday, the kind of Texas spring day where thunder threatens but never quite comes. I dressed Harper in her softest dress, packed a bag of snacks and toys, and braced myself for another round in the same courtroom that had become as familiar as my own living room. Marissa looked different, tired, thinner, her hair pulled into a too-tight bun. She smiled at Harper, but it didn't reach her eyes. Caleb was there too, at the back, shoulders slumped. The judge reviewed stacks of documents, photos, pediatrician reports, and pages of therapy notes. My attorney, Gloria, summarized our journey with calm conviction. My client is not just a gestational carrier. She's Harper's mother in every sense that matters, day-to-day love, care, safety, nurturing. She's the only parent Harper has ever known. Marissa's attorney tried to pull at the court's heartstrings, highlighting genetic bonds and a mother unyielding right. The judge listened, stoic as always. But something had shifted. Maybe it was the exhaustion in everyone's faces, or maybe it was just time. The judge finally spoke, voice clear and steady. "Miss Dalton, you have provided a stable, loving home for Harper. The court acknowledges the biological connection, but Harper's best interests, her well-being, her attachments, come first. I am denying the appeal. Visitation will remain supervised and subject to review as Harper gets older. My hope is that, over time, the adults involved can put her needs ahead of their own pain." I sat frozen for a moment, relief and grief tangling inside me. I squeezed Harper close, whispering in her ear, "We did it, baby. We're safe." Outside the courthouse, I didn't talk to reporters. I just walked to the car, buckled Harper into her seat, and drove home in silence. There was no parade, no champagne, just peace. That night, I put Harper to bed, then sat down at my old desk and wrote her the last letter for the box beneath her crib. "Dear Harper, I fought for you with everything I had. I wish the world was simpler. I wish I could erase the pain that came before you, and all the pain we'll still have to work through together. But you are loved, you are wanted, and I will always, always choose you, no matter what. Love, Mom." In the weeks that followed, life slowly returned to something like normal. I cut down on media interviews, shut down the blog, and poured myself into being a present mother and teacher. My school community wrapped us in gentle care. Taryn, my sister, went back to her family but FaceTimed every night to check in. Marissa moved to another city. We arranged quarterly visits, always supervised. At first, she brought gifts, tried too hard, but over time she softened. Sometimes we'd talk in the park, passing Harper between us. The conversations stayed surface level, but gradually the sharp edges dulled. I never forgave her entirely, maybe never will, but I recognized her hurt. For Harper's sake, I learned to share space. Caleb asked for another chance, but I knew the trust was gone. I gave him supervised visits too. He showed up when he could, sometimes on time, sometimes not. I learned to stop waiting for him. My daughter deserved consistency. She deserved a parent who put her first always. Harper's second birthday came, a backyard picnic, a small circle of friends, no press, no drama. Just bubbles floating in the breeze, laughter, and a cake smeared across her beaming face. I watched her run barefoot in the grass, light and free, and felt a deep, quiet joy I hadn't known in years. At night, after stories and lullabies, I'd hold her close and think of everything we'd survived: betrayal, lawsuits, headlines, heartbreak. I'd think about the letters in the box beneath her crib, the years ahead, the hard questions she'd eventually ask. I vowed to answer with honesty and love, even when the truth hurt. Looking back now, I see how easy it would have been to let bitterness win, to let anger shape the story of our lives. But as I watched Harper grow, finding wonder in every small thing, I realized healing is possible, even after the worst betrayals. Not perfect, not complete, but real. Some lessons cost you everything you once thought was secure. Love needs trust. I only learned that when I lost it. But I gained something too: my daughter's future, my own voice, and the strength to stand tall when the storm finally passed. If you're listening to this, if you've ever been broken, betrayed, or told you don't belong, don't let them decide your story. You can fight. You can heal. And sometimes, against all odds, you can win. The camera, off now, the house is quiet, but our story, mine and Harper's, is just beginning.